I am currently 103 years old, and in about 1 month, I will be 104. People look at me, and they always want to know what it feels like to live for over a century. But the honest answer is, it doesn't feel like anything, and that is the whole thing. Of course, my body is slower, my speech is slower than it used to be, but mentally, I feel capable. I feel like I could absolutely handle a class right now. I look at young people today, like a young man I was speaking with recently. He's only 25, and it makes me smile. He told me people his age often feel old or worry that it's too late to do things. But I told him 25 is just the beginning of life. It is beautiful. When you are 25, you feel pressure. But when you get to my age and look back, you realize being that young is like finding pearls. I often tell people not to look for a secret to living to 104 because there is no secret. You do it by accident, or you do it by getting to know different things and acting differently. But ultimately, you are born one way, and you are going to die one way, and God is the only one that can help. To understand how I see the world, you have to go back to where I started. I was born on April 8, 1921, in Italy, where I had a small childhood before everything changed. When I was 8 years old, my family came to the United States on a boat, a journey that took about 8 days. It is unbelievable to me now that you can fly there in 7 hours. But back then, the ship was so crowded, they had taken too many people aboard. The ship couldn't hold that many people comfortably, so some of us had to sleep on the deck. Despite the hardship, the crew was very nice, and they got us here safely. Growing up in America during those times was not easy. When I was about 10 or 12 years old, I tried as much as I could to help my mother because we were very poor. We didn't even have money to buy ice and for our ice box. There was a milk company nearby, and I would watch them loading up their trucks with massive chunks of ice. They used to break the ice there, and small pieces would chip off and fall from the platform. I would stand there, fill up a container with those discarded chips, and bring them home so we could keep our food cold. Sometimes I would work hard enough to make 2 trips, and we would give the extra ice to the neighbors. That was a difficult time, but it taught me about character. The most important lesson I ever learned didn't come from a school. It came from my mother. She told me, never lie, always tell the truth. She explained, when you lie, you are forced to tell another lie on top of that one, to cover it up, and then another one after that. I took her advice to heart, and I have told the truth all my life. I never wanted to be trapped in that cycle of lies. That simple lesson was the foundation of everything that came later, long before I put on a uniform and went to war. In 1941, the world shifted beneath my feet again, and I entered the service for World War II. When I said goodbye to my parents and siblings, I didn't have that heavy feeling of doom that you see in the movies. I honestly didn't think I will never see them again. I was young, and I had a stubborn kind of optimism. I told myself, oh, pretty soon the war will be over. They will send me home, and I will be back with my parents and my brothers and sisters. But the reality hit me very quickly. By the second day, I realized I wasn't just on an adventure. Being away from home started to ache, but I understood my being there was necessary for the country. I was assigned to the Air Force, and I found myself in the thick of it, from the Battle of the Bulge to the skies over D-Day. I flew 14 trips, transporting equipment, food, and ammunition. It was terrifying work. We were constantly being bombed. And I remember the Germans had this specific gun, an 88. It was like a cannon that would shoot high into the air and burst at a specific altitude. Anything walking or flying near that burst was dead. My plane took a beating. If you look at photos of it, you can see holes all over the wings and fuselage where bullets and shrapnel tore through. There were moments I thought I was going to die, many times, in fact, but the things I saw on the ground were even worse than the fear in the air. The Nazis were terrible people. I struggle to even describe them, because if you call them animals, it is an insult to animals. An animal wouldn't do what they did. I used to look at them and wonder how people could be so miserable and cruel, but we cleaned them up. The memories that haunt me aren't about my own near misses. They're about what I witnessed. D-Day was a terrible place. I saw young men, mere kids, floating face down in the water, their hands still gripping their rifles. They hadn't even fired a single shot. And then there was the personal loss. I remember a man named Pepe who brought his accordion into the Army. He used to play for us, and we enjoyed his music so much. But after a while, I didn't see him anymore. That absence, just realizing someone is gone, that hurts. That is why I get uncomfortable. When people today try to call me a hero, I tell them plainly, I am not a hero. The real heroes are the people who are still over there, the ones lying in the cemeteries. They gave everything. I just did what they told me to do, and I was lucky enough to survive. The end of the war was a roller coaster I will never forget. We were in Germany when my first sergeant called the battalion together and told us the war was over and we were going home. We were all so happy. But a little later, they came out handing us khaki uniforms. I asked, why do we need khaki uniforms if we are going home? The officer said, you're going to Japan. My face dropped. I pleaded internally, oh my God, no, please, no. But then, finally, the news came. It was truly over everywhere. Everybody threw up their hats. We celebrated with these little bottles of 3.2 beer. They didn't allow us much alcohol, but we had a good time. Looking back at all that destruction, I have realized wars are usually fought over nothing. Often it's because one person wants more money than the other guy, or wants to prove they are better. I don't understand why people can't just be satisfied living the same way, rather than trying to outdo one another. We fought, we won, and I came home to build a life, but I left a part of my heart with those boys who never woke up. Life didn't stop when the war ended. In many ways, it was just waiting to begin properly. I took a different path than most when it came to love. I didn't find my true partner until much later in life. I was around 51 years old when I married my wife. In 1972, I had been married briefly when I was younger, to a young girl, but it was very short, and I don't even count that at all. The real story began when a friend set me up on a double date, and I met the woman who would stand by my side for 49 years. People often ask me why so many marriages today fall apart. I tell them it's because people don't know how to compromise. They want things their way, and the other person wants things their way. The secret, the absolute key to our 49 years of happiness was simple. We became one person. You cannot operate as two separate individuals, pulling in different directions. If she wanted to go somewhere, and I didn't, we would say, okay, this time we go where you want, and next time we go where I want. You have to stop thinking of yourself all the time. If you don't act as one person, it is not going to work. My wife was a lovable person who would do anything for me, and I loved her deeply. Losing her was the hardest blow. It happened recently, and the way it happened haunts me. I had just come out of the hospital, and she went out to get me some medicine. While she was out on that errand of care for me, she got into an automobile accident, and she was killed. That was it. One moment she was caring for me, and the next she was gone. But the love remains, because true love isn't about looks. It comes from within, from the character and honesty of the person. Looking back from the vantage point of 104 years, I am pretty well satisfied with my life. I don't carry heavy regrets because I always tried to treat everyone the way they would like to be treated. I see people who dwell on their mistakes, and usually those are the people who keep making the same mistake over and over again without realizing it. You have to learn and move forward. And yes, even at my age, I am still learning. You can be 24 or 104, but you never stop learning. I am still learning about people, realizing those I thought were one way are actually different. Life changes every hour, and you have to be ready to change with it. If you were to ask me, after all this time, after the poverty of the Depression, the horrors of the war, and the joy of a lifelong love, what makes a great life? My answer is simple. A great life is when you do not always think about yourself. It is when you think about other people. That is the only way to truly enjoy it. So here I am. The body is slower, but the spirit is still here. I pick up my saxophone, I look at the sheet music, and I play, because as long as you are breathing, you are still at the beginning of something.